this torrent of spam and misinformation. And that was the big bugaboo at the time. And so what happened, they went through this methodical rollout over 6 or 9 months. They started releasing the smaller parameter models, and then they scaled up to the big 1.5 billion parameter model. And at the end of it, it was between nothing but if you actually think that Mythos is capable of doing what it says it can do, two things are true. One is a very sophisticated hacker can probably do those things right now with Opus. And two, if these exploits are this easy to find, whether you use Opus or whether you use Mythos, the reality is you have to shut down the internet for about 5 years to patch them. So when you see like a large multi-trillion-dollar GSIB bank, it's a bit of theater. Why? What do you think they can actually accomplish in 2 months? Do you actually think that if there's these vulnerabilities, it's all going to get fixed? Let's give them 6 months. Let's give them 9 months. But the reality is that capitalism moves forward, the funding needs moves forward, and the need for these guys to build adoption moves forward. And that's going to supersede what this is. So I do think that Sachs is right, that they have figured out a very clever go-to-market muscle here, and a go-to-market motion that activates hyper-attention and hyper-usage. And so I give them tremendous credit. And I'll maintain what I've maintained before. Anthropic is shooting the lights out right now. This is like Steph Curry going bananas. From everywhere on the court, these guys are hacking threes, plays, it's all net. Okay, so huge kudos to Anthropic. But we've seen it before. We saw it from these folks for the principal architects at OpenAI. We're now seeing the same playbook here. I think we'll look back, and I think what we'll say are these two things. One is, if we're really going to patch all these security holes, we need to shut down the internet for some number of years, honestly, literally years. And the second is, an advanced hacker can probably do this today with Opus if they really wanted to.
Okay, hey Brad, I'll get you into for the next one. I'm gonna go with, yeah, maybe they did try one before, but based on what I see with these models advancing and using them, I'm using one of the open source ones right now from China. I think that this is the Code Red kind of moment. This is DEFCON. We should be taking this deadly seriously, and I think these companies got to coordinate with the CIA. And this is equally a defensive as offensive opportunity. Do you think this
You're asking
is
for the nationalization of AI?
No, I don't think it should be nationalized, although I did see people sort of insinuating that. I think these companies need to build a group around that work and coordinate with the CIA. I assume that they're already doing this. I'm assuming Neil Michael and Trump and everybody have these people in the room, and that they've given the DEFCON and said, hey, how can our government use this to stop bad actors? And this is already being coordinated with the CIA and the FBI. I am 100% certain of that Dario went to them and said, look what we found. This is the real deal. I'll give you the last one when it's Brad since you're the last one. They know them quite well.
The Frontier Model Forum, which was put together in 23, is cooperating on anti and adversarial distillation stuff as we speak, right? They don't want to make it easy on, so Google and OpenAI and Anthropic, they're coordinating on this stuff. There are times where I push back on Anthropic because I thought it was, perhaps regulatory capture or something else. This is very different in my mind, right? Dario could have easily come out and said, oh my God, we passed the threshold, we need to have a government moratorium. Remember, even our friend Elon called for a 6-month moratorium in 2023 because of civilization risk. This guy didn't do that. Instead, he said, okay, what should we do? I'm going to get 40 of the leading companies together. We're going to spend 100 days sandboxing, hardening the systems, and then we're going to keep pushing forward.
What do you honestly think is going to get accomplished in 100 days? How many PRs do you think are going to get pushed to the core structural internet in 100 days? What's the over-under number? Because I'll give you a number.
You're going to say 0. My answer to that is...
I'll say like 10,000, but it's going to be a meaningless thing.
If it prevents your browser history from being released to everybody in the world, Chamath, that may be something that you're willing to, let 100 days pass on.
I think you got Chamath's attention when you said browser history.
What about the dick pics?
Chamath, he's going to release them himself. Chamath's like, hey, Chinese hackers, here are my dick pics. Please put them out.
Oh my God.
We have to be be out there complimenting when they're doing the right things and relying on the market rather than running to the nanny state and saying, do more of this. So this to me was just an example of a good balance. I'm sure we're going to have plenty of debates about this in the future, but this is one I'd like to see more.
This is why, to use your word, Jake, I write down a more nuanced take, is because we have no choice but to take this seriously. Whether it's total theater, whether it's fear mongering, and they do have a pattern around this, we can't take the risk, right? And it does logically make sense that as these models become more and more capable at coding, they're going to get better at Cypher, and there's going to be that one-time period where you're moving from pre-AI to post-AI, and you need a patch for that. So my guess is we're going to see a lot of patches over the next few months. I think that will resolve the problem. I think this is a case where I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that, I've criticized them in the past. I think that Blackmail study was embarrassing to the level of being a hoax. But I think in this case, I'm going to give them credit and say that I think that it's legit.
So it's not being a profit hoax. This could be legit. Looking at
We have no
this,
choice but to treat it that way.
of course, yeah. I mean, even if two things could be true at the same time, Zach. They could have used these tactics before. It could be performative, like the video with the dramatic music in the background. It does have a little bit of drama to it, and the way they presented it is very dramatic. But it does make logical sense that the one company that made the bet on code bigger than anybody else would be the one who would discover this quickest. And in 100 days, that's a pretty good, that's a pretty big advantage
Guys, if this
versus
is-
the hackers. But let me
guys.
make one more point there, Jamal. The most important thing that people haven't talked about here is the amount of code being pushed right now because of these tools is 10x, 100x in most organizations. So we need to have this type of security embedded in these new coding tools to do it in real time. That's the opportunity. There should be real-time correcting of this.
If this is real, they picked the wrong companies. Meaning, there are energy companies, folks that control nuclear reactors. There are airplane companies that are flying hundreds of thousands of people in essentially manufactured missiles of screaming gas going at 500 miles an hour. None of those companies were the ones that were included in this. And so I think if you really thought that this was end of days, at a minimum we can agree, maybe we should expand the circle a touch.
Well, maybe those are customers of the ones that are included here. Anyway, this is a really important story. We'll obviously track it in the coming weeks to see what turns out to be reality. And Dario, do come on the program at some point. Hey, Brad, when you get Dario to come on the program, I've been fighting him like 3 times. I got his phone number. He ghosted me.
He's ignored you?
I've literally got an introduction from one of the number one venture capitalists in the world. His name is Captain Larry Early. He just moved his on. I don't know why.
I would tell you, Dario's podcast with Dwarkish, who I think is an excellent podcaster, I've listened to that 3 or 4 times, taken notes every time. It is a really exceptional piece of work by
All right, let's keep moving. We got a lot on the
Jake,
docket
you
today.
may once again being tarred with your affiliation with us.
Or you.
I mean, I don't care. Literally, I've got friends on both sides of the line. I have friends
Of course you do.
Even Jake Hell.
even JPAL has friends everywhere.
Let me ask Brad a question here, just while we're on the topic of Anthropic. There was a really interesting story or tweet, I guess you could say, by the founder of OpenClaw that
Peter.
Yeah. What's his name? Peter
Steinberger.
Steinberger.
Yeah.
Renowned coder created OpenClaw, which is kind of the thing that launched this whole agent era now, I guess you could say. Any of that, he said that Anthropic was cutting off his access to
Okay.
was to Claude. Is that the next topic?
This is on the docket. It's a little bit nuanced. Everybody using OpenClaw would take their $200 a month subscription to Anthropic, which was essentially like people were using more tokens, and it's an average. The people from OpenClaw is very verbose, and those people are 100x the usage of the average subscriber. So he said, you can't use your 200, you have to use the API. You move from the $200 plan to the API, add a zero to your token usage, so or more. And so they essentially anchored OpenClaw, and then 10 days later or less, they released or announced their new agent technology, which is, according to them, a safer, better version of OpenClaw. So they had false ferret in level 1, and they have basically shot huge cannon across the bow of OpenFlow.
Jordan, can you just explain that exactly? So I think you're right that they systematically copied feature by feature of OpenClaw, incorporated that into Claude, and then the coup de grace was basically cutting off OpenClaw.
oxygen.
Yeah,
Yes.
can you just explain exactly what they did?
Okay, very simple. When you buy a subscription to these services, they have blended your usage across many users. So there's, 9 out of 10 users use less than the tokens they're paying for, and the top 10% use much more. When OpenClaw became a phenomenon, the number one open source project in history on GitHub, with all of this usage, people went crazy, and you heard me talking about how crazy I went through it. Those people with the $200 subscriptions were using $2,000, $20,000 worth of tokens. So they said you can no longer use your subscription to, either professional or enterprise subscription at $200 and plug that into your OpenFlow. You now have to go to the API and pay for usage. So no more like
But if you
unlimited essentially.
use Anthropic's own AG harness, are you part of the bundled flat rate?
You can assume that that's what they'll do, which, if you were thinking on an antitrust level, might be token dumping or price dumping. I'm not saying like I'm
Or
radical.
bundling? No, it's like bundling. So
Well, price dumping or bundling. When you price something under the market price in antitrust, that would be price dumping, right? And if you were to bundle, it would be like the bundling issue.
Critically important, you can use OpenClaw via Claude API.
Totally.
And every company has a right to set the price for its products. It's just saying that you were under their current regime, they were selling dollars for 10 cents via OpenClaw because these were such power users. And now they're just saying we have to price this rationally, but we're happy to have you guys use the API. So
okay, but Brad, when you use the OpenClaw competitor that Anthropic now offers, are they subsidizing that? Are you
We
paying?
don't know yet because it's in closed beta.
So in other words, what I'm saying is if they charge for API usage, right, their own first-party agent harness or system, then that would be apples to apples. But if they end up charging the bundled flat rate, let's say, for their stuff, but then charge the meter rate for third-party stuff, you could make a bundling argument.
Sure.
And you could say it's anti-competitive, assuming that Anthropic has dominant market share in coding, which I think most people would say they do at this point.
and assuming that it's the same product. I mean, the reason most enterprises will probably use the Anthropic version of this agentic product is because it meets all of your security parameters, right? So Altimeter runs, a lot of stuff on Anthropic. They're already integrated within our data warehouse, our data lake, things of that nature. So just letting OpenClaw loose on the Altimeter, data set would not be wise. And so it's a different fundamental product.
No, I get that, and I think that Anthropic has a huge advantage, let's say cloning OpenClaw and just building it into Claude. I'm not denying that. To me, that would be the reason why they don't need to do price discrimination, is because there's already a very good reason to use let's call it the bundled offering on a featured basis. And the question I specifically asked you is whether they're giving themselves the price advantage. Because
I think you're just giving the most generous interpretation. We're taking the more cynical one. I'm with you, Saks. I'm 100% on the cynical side. OpenClaw is so powerful. It's got so much momentum that not only is Anthropic trying to ankle it, I believe when Sam Altman bought it, it was, he didn't buy OpenClaw itself, he hired Peter. I believe it was to subvert the open source project to get Peter's next set of genius ideas inside of OpenAI, as opposed to letting you go there. People are going to say I'm a conspiracy theorist, but this is the number one focus, and let me just give you a list of who is trying to kill OpenClaw / compete with them. Obviously, you have Anthropic, but also Perplexity Computer Launch. It's awesome. I've been using it. Anthropic has this Claude managed engines. They dropped out on Wednesday, April 8th, or yesterday. Today's Thursday when you take. You guys listen on Fridays. And then you have Hermes agent that was released on February 25th. That's also open source and very good, so that's in the open source camp. Alibaba's coming out with one that's going to be based on the Quinn model. Then you have Elon, who said he's got something called Grok Computer coming out of MacroHard, which is a fighting words from Microsoft. In addition to that, Amazon and Apple are preparing new releases of their retard maxing assistants, Alexa and Siri. That will be less retarded in this new version. And then nothing out of Satya and Microsoft yet. So the number one goal, I believe, in large language model, frontier model space is to kill this open source product.
No, I mean,
Because-
come on, like, why they're building multi-functioning agents that can move from answering questions to actually doing something for you. Like, you got to do that because that's what consumers and enterprises want. It doesn't mean that it's about killing OpenClaw. It's just this is an obvious thing
They
that the
have the
world
right to
wants.
do it, but this is a giant movement to stop it because this is the equivalent of having an open source Android-like player in the market. And that could be incredibly disruptive because I believe open source is going to win the day on the large language models and taking 90% of the token usage. And I think the entire frontier model space could be undercut by open source. And I think they realize that SLMs, the smaller language models that are verticalized now, that will run on desktops and laptops, and it's even starting to run on the top ones, that is their biggest competitive threat. And I hope it happens. All due respect to your investors, Brad. I think this technology and the interface is, he plays bets, but I think it's imperative that the agent level, which is essentially your entire life, you don't give that to Anthropic. You don't give that to OpenAI. That's your entire business, your entire life. It is foolish for you, Brad, to give your entire business and all the knowledge you have to Anthropic Relay, unless you're just doing it to boost your investment in those companies. But I would be very concerned if I were you with putting all of your knowledge that you've earned over a lifetime into any of these large language models.
All right, Jake Al, let me ask you a question. Thank you for that impassioned monologue. Actually, I want to ask
Coming
all
to my
three.
TED Talk.
Yes, thank you for that TED Talk. I have a yes/no question for each of you. Do you believe that Anthropic has dominant market share in coding right now? Yes or no?
In coding?
Yes.
They
Just
have the
coding.
lead, but not they have the lead, but not dominant.
I think it's $1 trillion market, and these guys have less than 10% of it today, so it's hard to make a case.
What percent of coding tokens do you think that Anthropic is providing in the market right now?
Greater than 50%.
Okay, that's called dominant market share.
I don't know about that.
More than 50% of the market.
Look at the TAM. Look what the TAM is doing. There are a lot of people who provide, that are in the business and helping people make software.
Tiebreaker before we move into this.
I'm not saying it's a permanent condition.
Oh, yeah.
You're telling me that today, Anthropic is delivering over half of the coding tokens. That's clearly a dominant position in the market for coding. It's an early market, it could change, but
If I were representing them, David, I would say 9 months ago, everybody called us, out of the game. We were being destroyed by OpenAI. In 3 months now, people are saying we have dominant market position. This is the fastest changing, most competitive market in the world. I think it'd be very hard pressed to walk into, some district court and make the case that these guys have somehow already formed a monopoly against Amazon, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, etc.
well, I'm not saying it's already a total monopoly, but I am just asking about market share, and I do think you guys all agree
Get
on
your
market share.
mouth.
We're probably